The Chaos Cubed game drop is set to release on June 16th, which is less than a week away. Now that we know all the features included in the update, I thought it would be fun to discuss my thoughts on all of them. So I have a tier list here to help me move along and decide which features I'm more excited for that I could see myself using in my own Minecraft world, as well as features that I'm less enthused about, and everything in between. So, with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so the first feature here is being able to put a sulfur cube in a bucket. So, this isn't really something that I'm all that excited for, but I do think it's a good feature. It means that you can transport sulfur cubes around in your world more easily. So I do think it's a good feature. I'll put it there. Now, okay, chiseled cinnabar. I liked the old texture more. If you're unaware, they actually changed the texture for this block, and a lot of people thought that it was a beetle, a cinnabar beetle, which makes sense because there is a cinnabar beetle in real life. I thought it looked more like a spider, so that's why I made a YouTube short predicting that they would introduce a new spider to the game. But unfortunately, they only made it so that cave spiders spawn in sulfur caves, and there's no new sulfur spider or anything like that. Now, as for the block itself, I think it looks more like an ant than a spider. I think the middle segment is just slightly too long. So I don't think it's a fantastic feature. I think you could use it in some sort of insect build, but it's much more specific in its use cases than some of the other chisel blocks. So yeah, I'll put it in bad. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't see myself using this block, really. Now, for the other chisel block, it resembles a sulfur slime, which is also very specific. I think at least with this one, you could use it to indicate a sulfur cube minigame or a sulfur cube redstone component. So I'll put it in okay, just because you could use it for signage. Now for Cinnabar, this is the Cinnabar that you find naturally spawning in the cave, and I do quite like the texture. It is more of a pink red than netherrack is, but I think it blends well with those blocks, so you could use it as texturing. I would say it's a good feature. We already have blocks that are kind of similar to it, but I don't think it's a bad texture. By the way, I'll put all of the variants in the same tier. I don't think a slab is worse than a full block. Now, for the Cinnabar bricks, this is something we don't have in the game. I know that there are netherrack bricks, or nether bricks. Not netherrack bricks. They have a texture of nether brick, which is more brown. So I do think the texture is quite nice. So I'll put it in the same tier. Now, for sulfur, I think I'll rank the regular sulfur first. It looks kind of like a puke color, like vomit. It's not the prettiest looking block. I do think it has less use cases than Cinnabar. I'm building a sulfur biome in my world, so I definitely will use it for that. And you could use it if you want a yellow block with a stone rocky texture or something that looks kind of goopy. I think that Cinnabar is slightly nicer looking. Now, as for the bricks, they're very similar to Endstone, more yellowy though. The problem is, if I want to build using a yellowy or tan brick, I might end up using Endstone unless I want it to be slightly more yellow. It's not the nicest yellow either. It's like a mustard yellow. So I'll put it in the bad tier. And you might think I'm being unfair because I have nothing in the best tier up here yet. But we have more features to get to. So I think polished should go in the same tier. It's not much worse or better. Now, for the first block or feature that will go up in the top tier, it is the potent sulfur. So it's not so much for the block itself, but rather the traits of the block instead of the texture. So if you don't know, you can create a geyser using the potent sulfur. And I actually had a chance to play around with this in the Java edition, which I don't normally play, but I messed around in the snapshot version. I actually created a whale design that utilizes the geyser mechanic, which I think looks pretty cool. You can put magma underneath if you want more periodic eruptions, or lava underneath if you want it to constantly erupt, or at least to control the timing of the eruption, which I think is pretty cool. I think there's all kinds of neat buildstone related builds that you can use this in, as well as just functional builds like moving vertically. Instead of using a bubble column, you could use a geyser. In my opinion, this might be the most exciting feature for me in my world. I think that I'm going to use this in tons of different builds. I know I've seen designs for waterfalls utilizing the geysers. Of course, the block itself is fine. You can also create a sulfur texture particle thing. Not the most useful. You could use it to represent a gas of some kind in like a factory or an alien landscape. But for me, it's really the geyser that I think is most exciting. So for that reason, it goes in the S tier. The next feature is the sulfur cave itself. So this is a collection of all of these other features because this update is so focused on the sulfur caves and the sulfur features. I have to put it in the S tier because I'm always excited for a new biome, especially one like this that has all kinds of new blocks to play around with. But on the generation of the cave biome, because it spawns in caves, I think it is one of the more unique caves. It's certainly more unique than dripstone caves because you do have the sulfur cube that spawns there and two different unique block palettes that also generate, as well as sulfur pools and the particle effects. Really creates an interesting atmosphere of red and yellow that you don't get anywhere else underneath the surface of the world. It's a strange biome that is unlike anything that has existed in the game before. So I think that for all those reasons and how unique it is, it should go in the S tier. For the sulfur cube itself, I played around with this and I think it's a very fun mob. The only issue and the only reason that I won't put it in the S tier along with the other features is because I do mainly play single player, and I know you can probably use this in redstone builds. I saw someone made a zip line using the sulfur cube, which I thought was cool. But playing a single player world, it's not the most practical thing to build mini games when you're the only one that can play them. So unless I invite other people on my world, this isn't going to be a feature that I'm going to be using all that often, if ever, in my world. I do want to try messing around with it and seeing what I can do with redstone, but overall, I just don't think it's all that exciting for me personally. But I can understand if you play multiplayer, this might be the most exciting feature in this update. So, there's also the spawn egg, which, I mean, it has to exist, but I guess I'll put it in okay. Okay, next, there's the sulfur pools. I guess this is what that is. Now, this generates in the biome, so I think I'll put it alongside it. They are certainly a feature that makes the caves feel more unique. So, yeah, I'll put it in the A tier. And the final feature is the sulfur spring, the surface sulfur spring. Now, these generate on the surface, and I actually found 2 of them while playing with the features. They also generate with tuff and granite around them. They're a pretty small structure, and they're really just used kind of like the azalea tree to locate where the sulfur caves are below the surface. So I think that they are a solid feature, otherwise then you would have a harder time finding the sulfur cave. It's a slightly less common cave biome. So I will put it in the A tier, but other than being a signifier of the sulfur cave, there's nothing interesting about them really. So I think it needs to exist, but it's not exactly the most exciting feature. There is one feature missing, however, which is the music disc, which isn't on this tier list here, but having listened to the music disc myself, it sounds kind of like a lo-fi record disc, which actually does fit the vibe of Minecraft better than some of the more recent music discs, especially the Lava Chicken disc. So I would put that in the good category, I would say. I like the record disc. You do find it in chests that you find in the sulfur cave biome, so it does give you something slightly more rare to look for in the biome, which you don't really have with any of the other cave biomes. So there's also no sulfur spike included in this tier list here, and I like the sulfur spike. I think that it is a unique texture. It looks kind of goopy like the regular sulfur, but it's similar to regular dripstone in its shape and how it appears in the caves. That being said, I think it is less versatile than the regular dripstone. It doesn't really fit in many different kinds of builds, unlike the normal dripstone that you could use to represent wood or teeth, stuff like that. And the issue that I have with these kinds of features is they're not center aligned with blocks. So What that means is there's variation in where you place them, which can make it tricky to use in details of builds. So the idea that I thought of with the sulfur spike is to use it in a sea monster or a sea serpent build. You could use it in a dragon. It kind of looks scaly. So I just built this here really quickly for fun, and I think it looks all right, but it's not a very versatile feature. So I would put it in the okay tier or the B tier. But yeah, that's all the features in the game drop. So let me know what you all think in the comments below. And if you're excited about this update, I know I'll be messing around with the features in my Forever World. And if you'd like to see a video on that, then let me know. But with all that being said, my name is Fantastic, and I'm signing out.